You know, all around you, right at this very moment, there's an invisible war being waged. It's this constant, silent battle between the incredible forces of nature and, well, the buildings and bridges we use every single day. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden science of structural engineering, the science that keeps our whole world from falling down. Think about it. Whether you're sitting in a skyscraper or just in your own home, there are these amazingly complex systems that are working non-stop just to keep you safe. So how do engineers actually win this fight? Well, it all comes down to understanding one really fundamental idea. And this is it. The whole field pretty much boils down to this one crucial concept: load-bearing capacity. It's the ultimate measure of a structure's strength. See, every single part of a building has a breaking point, and an engineer's job is to make sure we never, ever get close to it. This number, it's literally what stands between a safe building and a total catastrophe.
So where does this whole battle even begin? You might think it's with steel and concrete, right? Nope, it starts with the ground right beneath our feet. We've got to start from the bottom up.
I mean, you could design the strongest skyscraper in the world, but if the ground it sits on is basically mush, it's completely useless. Soft soils, like clay, are a total nightmare for engineers. They shift, they settle, they just don't have the strength to hold up these massive structures. So what do? How do you build on shaky ground?
Well, the creativity here is just wild. Researchers are testing all kinds of unconventional materials to stabilize weak soil. Get this, they're using shredded medical mask fibers to add strength, kind of like rebar in concrete. They're using old-school willow brushwood mattresses to help spread the weight out. Even industrial byproducts like marble ash can actually change the soil's chemistry and make it stronger. It's all about finding these really clever ways to give the ground the reinforcement it needs. Okay, so once the ground is secure, it's time to build the skeleton. And, you know, it's just like our own bodies. The stronger the bones, the more resilient the whole thing is going to be.
This right here shows you just how much a basic building material can evolve. Regular concrete, yeah, it's strong, but it's also brittle, it snaps. But when you add tiny little steel fibers into the mix, you completely transform it. It becomes way more resistant to cracking, it can bend a little instead of just breaking, and its load-bearing capacity gets a serious upgrade. It's like giving the concrete its own internal reinforced skeleton. And the innovation doesn't stop there, not by a long shot. Engineers are doing things like wrapping concrete columns in these external steel clamps to literally squeeze more strength out of them. They're swapping out sand for carbonized biomass to create totally new kinds of building blocks. And they're even figuring out how to turn industrial waste into brand new, usable materials. It's all about making our structures stronger, smarter, and, yeah, more sustainable too.
So we've got a strong structure, and it's sitting on solid ground. Fantastic. But what happens when that solid ground suddenly turns into a violent, shaking enemy? That brings us to the next big challenge: defending against earthquakes.
Okay. This is one of the most brilliant ideas in all of modern engineering. Instead of making a building super rigid to try and fight an earthquake's energy, what if you could just disconnect it from the shaking ground entirely? That's the whole idea behind seismic isolation. You basically put a flexible layer between the foundation and the building, creating a massive shock-absorbing cushion. And this is the absolute perfect way to picture it. Seriously. When the ground starts lurching back and forth during a quake, the building itself can stay relatively still, just kind of skating over all the chaos happening below. All that immense destructive energy from the earthquake just passes right underneath the structure, instead of ripping it apart. And these are the roller skates. Engineers have a whole toolkit of these different isolation bearings. Some of them are like giant hockey pucks made of steel and rubber. Others use a polished bowl and a pendulum system. They're all designed to absorb and dissipate that seismic energy, just in slightly different ways. And the research shows these things really work. For example, a study for a bridge in Jakarta modeled how different bearings would hold up. Now, the standard lead rubber bearings, they were effective for sure, but the friction pendulum bearings were even better. They reduced the destructive forces by an extra 2 to 6%. In a massive earthquake, that tiny percentage can absolutely be the difference between a bridge that stands and one that collapses. But look, building a strong, isolated structure, that's not the end of the story. The battle against failure is a lifelong commitment. So the final piece of this puzzle is making sure these structures stay safe for decades and decades to come. Because just like anything else, buildings and bridges get old.
They face daily stress from traffic, from wind, from temperature changes, and all that constant wear and tear slowly but surely reduces their load-bearing capacity. We can't just build them and forget about them. The work is never really done.
So this is how modern engineers stay one step ahead of a potential disaster. Using systematic standards, like the Russian GHOST guidelines, they're constantly inspecting. They take that data and they feed it into these really sophisticated computer models that track how the building's strength is changing over time. And that allows them to predict and assess the risk of failure long before it ever becomes a real danger. So let's bring this all together. All of this incredible science, from strengthening soil with old face masks to putting buildings on roller skates to using these crazy smart predictive models, it all matters so much. It means we can build safely in places we never could before. It means our buildings can last longer and be way more resilient. And most importantly, it means we can protect human lives from both the slow creep of time and the sudden violence of nature.
We're getting so much better at fighting back against gravity and the shaking Earth. But as our world keeps changing, new threats are going to pop up. And all this ongoing innovation in engineering leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. What will the next generation of materials and designs protect us from? What will the structures of tomorrow need to be built to withstand?